Meus respeitos, senhores.
Throbbing drums signal the start of a religious ceremony in a candomblé, as religious temples dedicated to the worship of African divinities are known in Brazil.
Eu me chamo Yalorixá Toroji de Ogun.
Olorixá Toroji de Ogun is the spiritual head and leader of this particular religious community located in São João de Meriti, a suburb of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Religious communities of this kind, which are known in Brazil as terreiros, serve many different purposes. Olorixá Toroji's terreiro, which is dedicated to Ogun, the Yoruba god of metal and warfare, is home to a famous candomblé. In its role as a cultural center, the terreiro in São João de Meriti hosts a school where the young children are taught to sing in Yoruba, one of Nigeria's main languages, which also happens to be the language in which the songs and prayers of religious ceremonies are practiced, rather in the same way as Latin was the language in which Roman Catholic Mass was said for many centuries. Before the religious ceremony itself began, the filmmaker was invited to join the members of the congregation to partake of an elaborate meal that had been prepared to honor his status as a distinguished visitor from Africa, the motherland. In a striking form of parallelism, the worship of the gods would later end by the offer of ritual items of food and nourishment to the African gods and ancestors whose descent into the world of human beings the religious ceremony would seek to achieve. Before the ceremony began, Olorixá Toroji introduced the filmmaker to some of the leading members of the religious congregation. One of those present was her young daughter, who would subsequently play an amazing role in the ceremony. Olorixá Toroji also named some of the gods and goddesses who were expected to grace the candomblé with their presence during the ceremony.
Hoje nós vamos reverenciar Shango, reverenciar as Iabás, junto com as Iabás, Oxóssi e Logum-Edé. Hoje a função é agradecendo a todos os orixás, e Eshu e Ogun virão porque são os guardiões e soldados.
It was another introduction ceremony, but this time the filmmaker was being introduced to forces he could not actually see. In African religious belief, there are two parallel worlds: the world of the living, in which human beings exist, and the world of the spirits and divinities, which exists in a different sphere. We, human beings, cannot visit the other world except in dreams or when we die. However, spirits, ancestors, and divinities move freely between the two worlds. When they visit the earth, We cannot ordinarily see them through our own eyes, but they are capable of actions that influence our lives, hence the need to seek their intercession with the Almighty God for our protection, success, and well-being in life. The entire purpose was to invite some of the entities that inhabit the world of spirits and divinities to cross temporarily into our own world in order to interact physically with us. The divinities that choose to come to visit us manifest themselves by taking over the body and mind of devotees when such devotees fall into a trance induced by the drum patterns and songs that are peculiar to each divinity. While in a state of trance, the devotee becomes a material incarnation of the divinity, whose speech, character traits, and behavior are reflected in the speech and behavior of the devotee during the period of trance. The ceremony itself began with invocations to the principal divinities. First on line is Eshu, God of the Crossroads. In candomblé ceremonies, just as in centuries-old traditional Yoruba religious worship in the Nigerian homeland, no invocation of the gods can properly begin without a preliminary invocation to Eshu, who opens the path to other divinities as well as to the Almighty God, to whose ultimate control both divinities and human beings are subject. In African religious belief, the entire purpose of religious ceremony is to commune with ancestors and divinities and to seek their intercession with the Almighty God. In a sense, the entire ceremony unfolds like a theatrical performance in the course of which various divinities appear in our midst. The gods and goddesses continue to appear among us. They will grace the candomblé with their presence during the ceremony, provided we perform the appropriate rituals. After they have signified their pleasure by greeting members of the congregation and passing on some of the messages they wish to communicate to human beings, they dance to the beat of the drum patterns and songs that honor each of them. One by one, the gods and goddesses whose impending visit had earlier been announced by the Iyaolorisha appear. Once a devotee falls into a trance, he or she is led into a secluded room in the candomblé and clothed with the finery and symbols of the divinity that has chosen to manifest its presence by taking possession of the devotee. Eshu, god of the crossroads, playful and mischievous, stern and unforgiving. Some of the gods and goddesses have multiple avatars. For instance, Oshun, the Yoruba river goddess who is known in Brazil as Yansan, has different manifestations with different attributes and costumes. Eshu is simultaneously playful and mischievous, as well as stern and unforgiving. He is relentless in punishing wrongdoers who seek to approach God without first cleansing their minds of evil thoughts. Most of the time, Eshu misleads such insincere people and sends them off in futile directions. Sometimes his punishment is more direct. Wielding a heavy club for which he is famous, Eshu lands heavy blows that crush the skulls of evildoers. When Eshu is approached in the right way by people whose motives for seeking divine intervention are sincere, Eshu reveals himself to be a kind and helpful divinity who helps speed human requests to successful reception by the other divinities as well as to the Supreme Being. Once a devotee falls into a trance, it is no longer a mere mortal that we see. It is a god or goddess who is here among us. There are various manifestations of Ogun, such as Ogunja, Ogun Masa, Ogun Zenoke, and Ogun Ire. The gods and goddesses clothed in the ceremonial costumes associated with each divinity and holding in their hands the symbols that reflect the specific attributes of the various gods and goddesses. Dance to the distinctive beat of the drum patterns and songs that honor each of them. In one of her most intricate manifestations, Yansan appears as the embodiment of femininity. The devotee in trance mimes this aspect of Yansan by reflecting the gestures of Yansan in the process of having a bath, combing her hair, and applying makeup to her face while admiring her features in an invisible mirror. Shango, the fierce divinity associated with rainstorms, thunder, and lightning, is easily recognizable because of his kingly costume, as well as because he holds the symbolic double-headed axe associated with the legendary Shango. Yemoja, most beautiful of goddesses, wears a crown that dissimulates her features behind an amazing veil made of seashells. And now, as the ceremony draws to a close, it is time to offer a ritual meal to the divinities who have honored us with their visits today. The meal is also meant to be shared by all the other divinities and ancestors in their abode in the spirit land. The actual sacrifice and offering takes place in open ground that symbolizes the African ancestral homeland from where the Afro-Brazilians were brought to Brazil as slaves. The slaves arrived in this new land bearing no worldly possessions, but they brought with them their culture, their music, and their religious beliefs, and they have fought hard over the centuries to preserve these precious belongings. Several centuries later, their descendants continue to commune with the gods and goddesses of the African motherland.
Todos devorados, masculino, feminino, que possa nos proteger, nossas causas, nossas lutas, nossos ileitos, nossas batalhas, nossos onantes, nossos caminhos. Beijo por lá e lá. A benção.
when Iya Olorisha Toroji herself suddenly falls into a trance while offering closing prayers, Ogun descends among us. Finally, Yemoja departs, and it emerges that the devotee whom she chose as the vehicle for her visit today was none other than the graceful daughter of Iya Olorisha Toroji. Sarava! Greetings to the ancestors and the divinities. For today, the gods and goddesses have come and gone. They are still here, watching over us, but we can no longer see or hear them. Ogunye! Sarava!